This was the first and last time I ever used Airbnb. I loved to visit other towns close to where I lived and would mostly stay in motels or even hotels depending on the location. Motels aren't always safe when traveling alone as a woman, and I heard that Airbnb generally rented out homes or rooms within these homes, which seemed ideal. I decided I was going to try it out on one of my next trips. I saw this one property that looked beautiful. It was clean, modern, and had great reviews. Perfect for my first time. I arrived at the house and pulled up into the drive, gathered my belongings, and made my way into the house. The house had one of those key lock boxes on the outside, so I didn't actually meet the landlord. This was great and seemed like a nice, easy process. As I was making my way inside, I saw a man watching me from the house next door. He was sitting on the porch, staring at me. I said hello, but he didn't respond to me. He remained sitting there with a beer in one hand and a cigarette in the other. I went inside and put my things in the bedroom. I had a bath, read some of my book, and went to bed at about 11 p.m. I woke up, hearing a noise within the house. I saw the time on the alarm clock read 1:15 a.m. I sat up and saw a man standing in the doorway to the bedroom watching me. I was scared, as in I nearly pissed the bed scared. "Can I help you?" I asked nervously. He just stood there, watching me. Then I realized it was the man from next door. "Aren't you the guy from next door? Is everything okay?" The man turned round nonchalantly and walked away like it wasn't weird to be standing there watching me. I leapt out of bed as I heard the front door close. I'm not even sure how he got in. I was sure I locked the door. I nervously ran to the window at the front of the house and saw the man from next door shuffling down the path and going back into his own house. I called the emergency contact number on the information pack I was sent when I made the booking. I didn't feel safe here now, and the whole experience was weird. Someone answered the phone, but there was no one there. "Hello, it's Marie. I rented the Airbnb from you." No response. "Hello? Hello?" I hung up the phone and called again, and the same thing happened. This time, I could hear someone breathing down the phone, so I knew someone was there. This screamed horror movie. I really didn't feel like I had any other option than to call the police. The police came and took a statement from me. Then they went to visit the man from next door. It turned out he owned the house I was in and had a key to get in. He claimed he heard a scream coming from the house, and he came to check on me. When no one answered the door, he let himself in to make sure I was okay. This was bullshit. There was definitely no scream, and I am sure I would have woken to someone knocking on the door. Even if that was true, why did he not say anything when I spoke to him while he stood there staring at me in bed? I didn't feel safe staying there, and so I packed my things, and the police saw me to my car and waited for me to leave. I put a complaint into Airbnb, and they gave me my money back, but I never felt safe using that platform after that. I later wondered how he had so many positive reviews when that's how he treats his guests. That's when I noticed. All the reviews were left by men, so obviously he didn't go spying on them like he did us vulnerable women. This happened last September. Me and my girlfriend of 2 years wanted to take a trip out to Ohio. We had seen some log cabins out there on Airbnb that were kind of out in the sticks. The log cabin we eventually decided on was in an ideal location and had access to lots of nature walks with local creeks and hiking trails. The living room and kitchen was open plan with a small ensuite bedroom in the back. It was our first real trip together, and when the day came, we drove the 5 hours it took to get there, making a few stops along the way. We set off early so we could make the most of the day and see what's around before we settled for the night. We arrived a few hours before check-in, so decided to park the car and walk to this waterfall we heard was a must-visit. The waterfall was relatively easy to find. We had downloaded a map off some review site before we left home, and there was little room for error. Just don't stray off the path. There was no one else around when we arrived at the waterfall, so we decided to take a dip in the shallow part of the water. There were signs saying no swimming, but a lot of the personal comments on the review site said it was safe to do so and just stick to the shallow end. As the day got on, the temperature started to drop and the clouds indicated that there might be some rain soon, and I certainly didn't want to get caught out in it. We got out, got dressed, and headed back towards the car. As we approached the car, I noticed that my front left tire was flat. My initial thought was that I'd punctured it while driving, but I noticed a slash in the tire, like someone had taken to it with a hunting knife. It was starting to get dark, so I had to be quick to change the tire. It was a fair distance to walk back to the cabin, and we had all our food and clothes still in the car, which would have been too much to carry just the two of us. We arrived at the cabin just after dark. I was exhausted, and we decided we would just make something to eat and then go to bed and unpack in the morning. We both slept right through until the next morning. My girlfriend was the first one up and went into the kitchen area to make coffee. She screamed, and I went running in. Our belongings were thrown all over the room. Someone had been through all our belongings while we slept. It was like someone had been looking for something specific. If it was burglars, surely they would have just taken the bags. Why risk staying there to go through everything, knowing you might get caught? For all they knew, I could have been armed. My girlfriend suggested it was a wild animal, but I disregarded the comment. We were warned that bears were common at this time of year, as they're generally scavenging for food and preparing for hibernation. But this just didn't feel like an animal, and the kitchen was pretty much untouched. We contacted the Airbnb host, and he explained that this had never happened before, and asked us what we wanted to do. He offered us a partial refund, explaining that as the door wasn't broken, we must have left it unlocked, as he was the only other person with a key. Maybe we did leave it open. We were tired when we got home and didn't really overthink going to bed. We decided to stay and make the most of our holiday. We spent most of the day cleaning up the mess and sorting our clothes. We decided to just write the day off and chill at the cabin. There wasn't any internet, but there was a TV and a Blu-ray player with a good selection of films to watch, so we decided to light the log fire and watch a film. I joked about watching Cabin in the Woods, but my girlfriend didn't find it so funny, especially with what had happened the previous night. We went to bed and made sure all the doors and windows were locked. I woke in the middle of the night to a loud bang on the side of the cabin. I lay there, thinking it might just be a bear wandering around, which, I'm not going to lie, is scary in itself, especially when you're not used to seeing bears wandering around. Then I heard it again, but it was much louder. And then, again, and then I saw the shadow of two men walk by the bedroom window. Someone was outside. I woke my girlfriend and tried to get a service on my cell, but with no luck. These men weren't trying to be quiet. They were banging as they walked around the outside of the cabin. They wanted to be heard. Then I heard something I really did not expect. One of the men shouted my girlfriend's name. I looked at her, scared, and she just looked back at me. "How do they know your name?" I asked her. She said that maybe it's the people who came into the house yesterday, and perhaps they saw her driver's license. It made sense, so I thought no more of it. So now, we needed to figure out what they wanted. I decided to shout to them as they were walking past the window. "What do you want? We don't have any money or anything valuable." "She knows what we want." I was both scared and confused. "Do you know these men?" My girlfriend paused. She knew them all right. It was her ex-fiancé coming to collect the ring he gave her. Apparently, he had been trying to get it back for some time, and it was somewhat of a family heirloom. I didn't even know she'd been engaged, let alone still had the ring. They threatened to kick the door in if we didn't open it. They knew we were there, they knew who we were, and knew we had no way of calling the police or anyone. I let them in. They had some type of shotgun with them. I'm not sure exactly, as I've never really been a gun fanatic. Her ex-fiancé, Jason, looked me dead in the eye and told me he wasn't leaving without the ring, even if it meant leaving me for dead. Thankfully, Melanie had the ring and gave it back to protect me, but I can never look at her the same way again after that. Not only did she not tell me that she was engaged, she kept the ring, which meant a lot to this ex-fiancé of hers. I just couldn't stay with that type of person. The next day, we packed our things. I dropped her off at home, and I never saw her again. I'd say I've used Airbnb more than 20 times over the last 18 months. I travel a lot for work and can charge any expenses on the company credit card. I'm in my early 30s and married my high school sweetheart in my mid-20s. I have 3 kids, all under the age of 7, so having a few days out for business comes as a blessing, especially when I find a nice house to have all to myself. Whenever I stay away from home, I'll pick up a takeout and a 6-pack and just have the night to myself and watch some TV that I want to watch. Other accommodations like motels can attract a lot of weird people looking to score at all times of night, so if I can find somewhere more secluded, then I like to take advantage. On this occasion, I managed to rent a little flat, which, although small, was very nicely kept and kitted out. It had a large TV, double bed, and home surveillance cameras around the exterior of the property. There was also a hot tub around the side of the property, which I have to admit was a key selling point to me renting this place. On my second night staying there, I arrived back after a full day of meetings. I'd picked up some Chinese food and a 6-pack on my way home, and when I arrived, I got straight into the hot tub. I don't know exactly how much time had passed, but I think it was probably close to an hour. As I sat there taking in the fresh air, I saw these 2 women walking across the grass between the houses, looking like they were all dressed up with nowhere to go. I couldn't help but glance over in their direction. I was probably being more obvious than I thought I was. I never was good at being smooth. They were laughing and started to wave at me. I waved back, and then one of the girls shouted over, "Room for 2 more?" "Yeah, sure, why not?" I jokingly replied. They stopped walking and then turned to each other and then started running over towards me. I never thought they would come over, and I really didn't want them to either. I'm a married man, and I love and respect my wife. As they got closer, I also realized that they were a lot younger than they appeared to be from afar. I made up some excuse that I had some food in the oven and would be back out in a minute, then went into the house as they got undressed to climb in. I jumped into the shower and then got dressed. I had to think of a way to get rid of them, so I turned off all the lights except for the spotlight where the hot tub was and left them outside. Maybe if they think I've gone to bed, they'll eventually get bored and leave. Then there was a knock at the door. It was one of the 2 girls asking for more beer. They had drunk my beer I had outside. I tried to ignore her, but she kept knocking and shouted she would scream if I didn't open the door. I opened the door slightly, but only enough so the girl could see me. "Hey, I don't have any more beer and I have to be up early tomorrow, so it's probably best you leave now." The young girl tried to make her way inside the house, but I put my foot behind the door so she couldn't get in. She tried to convince me to let her in, saying she would go home and tell her dad that I gave her and her friend beer when they were underage. I didn't exactly give them beer, so I called their bluff and told them to leave or I'd call the cops, and pointed to the cameras on the side of the house. They hurled abuse at me, which I didn't really care about as they were getting dressed and ready to leave. Once they left, I sat down to eat my food and watch some TV before making my way to bed. I eventually fell asleep and was soon woken by being dragged out of bed by my ankles. As my eyes adjusted, I saw 2 men in my room with ski masks covering their faces. One of them jumped on top of me before I had a chance to react, placing his knee on my chest and holding some kind of bar to my throat. "Tell me where the money is or I'll break your neck." I was confused. What money were they talking about? Did they think I was someone else? I was scared for my life. I told them the only money I had was in my bag in the closet. I carried $200 as some places don't always take cards. They took the money and raided the rest of the flat, taking anything of value, including a TV that belonged to the rental. They weren't even there 5 minutes from me being dragged out of bed. I called the Airbnb host and explained his flat was broken into and robbed. I believe the 2 girls had a hand in it, but I couldn't prove it. I told the host I would pay for the damages if he agreed not to report it to the police or Airbnb, to which he agreed. The men got through the front door by prying it open with a crowbar. It was probably the same bar that was held against my neck. I didn't really want anyone to know about this, as me waving to the girls and them being underage kinda makes me look like a creep. The damage cost me near $1,000, but it's worth it to not worry my wife or risk losing my job. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing.